Hi, everybody. It's me. If you haven't seen me recently, let me explain. This is Moohead Radio, and we're in Northeast Ohio podcast. And I've been doing it for 14 years until this infection hit me. Actually, it's an infection.
Yeah.
No, it's an ear infection. I can't hear you.
I'm here.
A bear asked me again. You people, look, we're going to talk 100% Cleveland Browns today. All right. I'm going to do a short show, but I'm doing this because, hey, the Browns played and I want to be able to talk about this, and my voice isn't 100%, but I think it's good enough to carry me through what little I have to do and what little I have to say. So thanks a lot for tuning in. We appreciate it. That's about it. I don't really have anything. I guess now I'll check. As usual with me is Brian, and Stephen is supposed to join us later, but I've heard that story before. We'll see if that actually happens or not. I put links if you want to join the program, both on the YouTube site and at mooheadradio.com. So if you feel so moved, jump on in. If not, well, then just sit back and listen, and you might learn something. All right. The Cleveland Browns football game yesterday. There's two main points that I want to make before anything else occurs. And those are the two biggest concerns that I have. Before we get into, sniffing certain players' asses and all of that stuff, there's two concerns that I have. One is the offensive line, because we couldn't run the football. And to be very honest with you, Chubb looked like Ironside. Chubb looked like he had all of the giddy up of a Maytag washing machine. He had no burst. I thought he was a plant and one cut runner. He ends up going wide. I don't understand that. And there was no, in the few inside runs, there was no real forward movement of the line. In a plain vanilla kind of circumstance like the preseason, you're not going to see complicated defenses. You're not going to see anything but plain vanilla. So certain players are going to look a little bit better. But once game planning comes into the fray, if they realize that you can't run the football, your quarterback is going to get mangled. And they're not going to see what Tyrod Taylor and Baker Mayfield saw yesterday. They're going to see a nonstop jamming of the line of scrimmage and preventing receivers from getting downfield or blitzing us and overburdening an already taxed offensive line. So what did you think? What was the problem with the running game?
Well, to me, I don't know what. Well, first of all, Zeitler, I think, was out, or was it Treader? One of them was out, either the center or the other guard. And so there was just absolutely, it looked like they were just running into a brick wall of blue. And then, that gave opportunities in the passing game, but you can't throw the ball 700 times and expect to win the game. We found that out last year.
Yeah, when I saw Drango hold a guy, I just hurled. It was like that horrible acid trip that you're still having because you decided to take some at Woodstock. And that's going to keep repeating itself over and over.
Was that the chokehold or a different one?
Yeah, that's the one where the guy was just going to get around him. He just grabbed him by the front of his jersey up around the throat. And there's Stephen Rose joining us on the program. Good. Another person who can take the load off of my weekend voice. How you doing, Stephen?
I'm doing marvelous. How you doing, Mr. Moohead? I'm glad to see you're getting better.
Well, I mean, slowly but surely. I mean, I'm just not taxing my voice by doing anything really stupid. Hopefully it, we'll survive this, and I can move forward with that. It's been an interesting 2 weeks, that's for sure. I just asked Brian the question a lot. Did you watch the Browns game, Stephen?
Yes, I did.
What was wrong with the running game?
With the Browns?
Yes, I wasn't really giving a shit about the Giants.
I didn't see any running game come from the Browns, but that's not the run blocking's horrible. But I did like Baker Mayfield in that backfield, though.
Yeah, but let's start out talking. And before we start sniffing his ass, let's talk about what concerns me most. And that is that we have still a patchwork. We have Batonio playing out of position, and I mean, I understand when Drango and Sean Coleman are in the game that, we're not going to be able to do anything. But they were trying to get Chubb off to a good start. And I don't, this is a north-south runner who was running east and west. I don't understand the play designs for him. He's slow as hell running outside. He looked slow as hell, period. The only thing he did was catch a 9-yard pass, 15 carries for 11 yards, and he couldn't move anyone a pile forward. I mean,
those would be okay stats if all 15 carries are down on the goal line.
Yeah, and a jumbo package, but no, I mean, he honestly, and he looked way slower than Matthew Days, which is not good. He looked ponderous, and I mean, I know the offensive line isn't good, and I've already expressed concern about that, but I'm going to express concern about Chubb because he just looked slow. He looked like a bust. To be very honest, I'm not going to just totally judge somebody predicated on one performance. I know that's not fair. But if you're not running him between the tackles, man.
Yeah, the run blocking looked terrible. And that's something that's been going on with Cleveland since the Manziel, even prior to Manziel. The run blocking has been horrible,
And that is the thing that makes me feel less enthusiastic about Tyrod Taylor and Baker Mayfield, is just because this is a false kind of security playing in a first preseason game. And when you're not running the football, during the regular season what would happen in a case like this. And once they realize that they can just handle you with 4 men or 3 men up front, they're going to attack you from the inside, from the outside. And that's how our quarterbacks get hurt every single year, is because
they should bring back Peyton Hillis.
Mr. Moohead,
by the way, we have an audience member behind you.
An audience member behind me. Oh, you mean Cosmo de Wolf? It's raining outside. He gets all freaked out when it rains. So yeah, he's breathing heavily, going through his doggy anxiety thing. What's up, Steven? What do you need?
Doesn't this game remind you of last year? Browns went 4-0 in preseason, dominated the Giants in the preseason game, and then this pregame hype, and then which led to 0-16. I hope that's not a deja vu.
A deja vu, we call it around here, and that means that a cow has seen it before. No, it didn't remind me of that, and I'll explain that in a minute. There is another thing that concerns me, though, and that's Huey Jackson. Now, I'm not a big proponent of the Hard Knock show. I prefer the Big Knockers video, which is something that, I got in an adult bookstore back in the 1990s. It's really awesome. These women with huge bolt-ons, but never mind. The Hard Knock show is more social media fodder, and I'm not into that too much. However, the scene that happened between Haley and Jackson makes me understand why we will never be successful as long as Wade Jackson is the coach here. And I can explain it to you this way, folks, is that there is a prevailing philosophy amongst people who I think are not optimally effective as far as bringing people together. And it's what I call because I can. And I'll explain some of this. I buy a radio station where one of the owners is, and I'm doing my due diligence on the radio station, and one of the owners is fucking the general manager of the station. And it's like, because he can. That's the reason. Because he's no. He's got the authority and he's got the position because he can. And I'm not going to take pot shots. I hated Bill Clinton. All right, because I'm going to be on both sides of the fence here politically. I hated Bill Clinton, and the reason I hated Bill Clinton is because he grabbed at women and did what he wanted because he could. All right, he was in a position where he could. All right, he made the rules. Donald Trump. Why would anybody drive a golf cart on a green, which is clearly against the rules of the game? Well, because he can. He owns the club. He can. Now, if somebody else tried to drive that golf cart on the green, they would be thrown out of the club. But he can. That's what Wade Jackson is. And for those people who are new to the show, Wade is the way I pronounce his name. Why?
He's the Che Guevara of head coaches.
Yes, he is a revolutionary head coach and still is. Always will be.
Yeah.
When he responded to Todd Haley by saying, basically, this is the way it is. It's my team, and I'm going to drive this bus. That's because I can. Not because the decisions I'm making are correct. Not that I'm 1-31 in my last 32 games, but because I have the title. I am HNIC. Politically incorrect, but go ahead, Stephen.
I was going to say, preach.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a racial thing, folks. It's an expression, and but it's the same difference as lots of head coaches who have not succeeded in the game. Because I said so, not because I do so, but because I said so, because I can, because I have the authority to do it. And, it's no different than, living in a gated community. I can tell you what that's like because I've lived in gated communities now for 20 years, 25 years. And there's always a homeowners association, and people who get elected to the offices of controlling the homeowners association become little Hitlers because they can. See, I actually had a visit in Florida from an HOA member who said, "Oh, we're trying to enforce this. We want you to put up curtains in all your windows." I said, "There are curtains and blinds in all my windows, not in your garage." I go, "My garage window? You want me to put up curtains in my garage window? What the fuck's the matter with you?" Now, it's like, don't you have, if you had 30 seconds to masturbate, you'd have more stuff to do than bother me. And I said, get the fuck out of here. Not putting up curtains in my,
Mr. Moohead, the HOA is so pathetic. They'll actually come and check to see if your garden is intact. I mean, that's how much of a power ego trip that some of these young guys have. They're like 23 years old writing me a ticket because my garden's not intact. I'm like, dude, what the hell is your problem? I'm like, you could drive around and catch somebody with a yellow garage door and write them with the more of with them being out of code than me with my garden.
But this is, again, because I can. And those are the wrong kinds of people for the job, yet they are very often the people who tend to migrate and gravitate toward those types of jobs, because HOA people, they have little needle dicks, right? Little needle dicked people, and they want to they want to carry a big schlong. And the only way they're going to do it in reality is to keep their pants up and become an officer of the HOA. And for Huey Jackson, you know, the only bad thing that can be said about Huey Jackson from Huey's perspective is that he had to jump in a smelly lake. All right. But other than that, it hasn't been bad for him because he's making millions of dollars and not doing anything except standing there saying, I can't give you an explanation why I'm letting people not practice and I'm not letting our team work harder. I can't give you an explanation except I've been on your side of the desk before. I know what you're saying, but this is my team and this is the way I'm doing it. And Jerry Glanville told us what NFL stood for. Do you remember, Brian?
Not for long.
That's correct. So Huey, not for long. When we're 0-4, which we will be, because invariably he is not a leader of men. He is an insincere, stupid ass. He's hugging all over Baker Mayfield and all this. He's what my mother used to call a phony baloney. A guy who you can see right through. He is sincerely insincere.
Mr. Moohead, Huey's like a used car salesman. He sells you a piece of shit car, and then when you turn it in the next day because there's problems, he's like, well, it worked yesterday.
That's right. I mean, it's, you know, that when you feel that you have, when you feel that a position, and let me explain this the best way I can for people. I have been in business in a capacity where I had no authority. I was in a position where I had some authority. And then for my ownership years, when I had all the authority. But I never had to remind anybody of that fact. I never had to sit there in front of my staff and say, well, this is my station and this is the way I'm, you know, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the job is to motivate people to do their job better, not to threaten them and beat them down with your title. And power is best used sparingly. Any good leader will tell you this, especially in a team kind of game. Now, I understand that Donald Trump was in a business where he was sitting above a lot of things. There were a lot of layers in his organization. There were no layers in my organization. I lived in the town that my stations were in, and I was in the office every day. And if somebody had a question, they'd come and ask that of me. And if somebody asked me a question like, how come we're doing things this way? My answer would be to explain to them why we were doing things that way. And I would say to the employee, do you have an idea on how to do it better? And I have taken suggestions from employees before because it's like, yeah, I think you're right. I think we'll try it that way. You know, the way that you get into the trust of the players is to listen to them and not just to be so damn defensive all of the time. Amsterdam says he was on their HOA board last year. I'm sorry, Needle Dick. I didn't mean to offend you. But he did say that their HOA president stole $100,000 and is being audited.
Yeah. HOA is a big ripoff anyway. And and if you move into a neighborhood that's HOA, you have to have them.
Yeah, I mean, it's but at any rate, so that's the other thing that really concerns me is that you have a guy like Haley and you have the offensive line coach, you got all the other guys who are the new coaching staff members saying, we got to be harder, we got to be tougher. And, you know, people will know that I am not like into the crazy Mr. Disciplinarian kind of things, but this organization has become so lax that I can't help but think that demanding a certain standard is more important with this group of players than it would be maybe for another team that were veterans who knew how to win and knew what they were doing. So, you know, it's a concern that I have that guys are, you know, we're never going to gel during this preseason if we're resting people for fear of, and, you know, I know what people will say it's not predictable. Darius Geis went down. He's done for the season. I don't know if you saw that. He tore his ACL for the Redskins in the first preseason game. He just ran wide in a play and gone.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was not.
There was a kid for a first-round pick for the Jaguars. Was it last year or the year before that first day of training camp? He's doing a drill, and all of a sudden he blows out an ACL and MCL, and he's totally done. And
yeah, I mean, look, these kids have been playing football since they were little Mighty Mike tykes, and then they played high school, and they played college, and now they're playing pro. I mean, the accumulated damage in the joints of these players from the time by the time they become a pro, they sign their $1 million contracts, but there's unseen damage, and all it takes is one tweak, one wrong plant, and the season's gone. And so it is for Darius Geis. It was not a predictable thing, and nobody is pointing at the Washington Redskins and saying it's your fault. Now, you could do that with the RG3 thing, what they did to him and what Shanahan and company did to RG3 years ago by making him play in a brace when he had nothing underneath him. I mean, that I think was really bad. But the truth of the matter is Hughes, and Haley's response, like, you're living and you're coaching on the basis of fear. And that's the truth, because it's a violent game. And violent things are going to happen and people are going to get hurt. Can't avoid that. But if you're the Cleveland Browns, you're 1-31 your last 2 years. You have to get these players ready to be up to speed for week 1. And it's never going to happen. And,
so,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's all. I mean, it's to be shot down by saying, nah, I've considered that in the past. Nah, my team.
But it's funny how Landry and Haley sounded very much the same, and Landry really lambasted a lot of those guys. And I think he was specifically talking to Higgins and Coleman and one of the other guys that was sitting out half of a practice here or 3/4 of a practice here, there, So
NFL, not for long. Wade Jackson is not going to be around. He is not, because this team is not prepared and doesn't start winning. If they don't win once in the first 4 weeks, he is gone.
Yeah.
I guarantee you he will be gone, because this is, and he's sure what Jarvis Landry was saying on Hard Knocks. If you take all the fucks out of it, he said about 4 words. But if you, it's what I call genuine frontier gibberish, Blazing Saddles. He expressed himself the way he wanted to express himself, but that's basically what he was saying is, I've been places and this isn't the way we do it. This isn't the way successful teams. And it's like, fuck, I was with Miami. Miami wasn't even successful, motherfucker. I got to throw some motherfuckers and fuckings in there. Make it authentic. I played in fucking Miami. Fuck you. Fuck your mom. And we weren't fucking successful, but we did a lot more fucking work than you're fucking doing here. Fuck. So I think it's obvious to somebody who comes in who has a work ethic that he sees these players loafing. And go ahead.
I was going to ask you 2-part question. Number one, doesn't Hugh Jackson kind of remind you of a smooth talker? He's like that guy that kind of smooth talks women into the bed and doesn't call them the next day. Sort of like with Cleveland, he sort of sells them what they want to hear, and then it doesn't equivalates on the field performance. And then the number 2, is there has he changed from that nice guy to all of a sudden now I'm this controlling guy because you are my girlfriend now and you do what I say because I can?
No, this is what he was in Oakland, and this is what got him fired by the front office after an 8-8 season with Oakland. No coach usually from Oakland, especially with the horrible Al Davis, end of Al Davis years, would have been fired for an 8-8 record, but his attitude is he's unworkable. You saw firsthand how he handles what he perceives as dissension when somebody's bringing up a point, and he just immediately arches his back, becomes defensive, and just hurls his title. It would be like if you said to Ron Jeremy, now Ron, I took a look at that scene just on the, and I think maybe we should cut that scene over again because you did this, and he just would yell at you, 11-inch dick, 11-inch dick. I mean, that's what Hugh Jackson does. He's just going to throw his title back in your face, yeah. And
I'm really shocked that Todd Haley had the strength to bite his tongue and not say, "You won how many fucking games here, pal? I won how many games in Kansas City? We won how many games in Pittsburgh? We beat your ass with a backup quarterback."
Well,
you had your starters. We were playing our backups and resting players, and we kicked your ass.
Believe me, it's being said behind the scenes. It wasn't going to be performed outright Shakespearean style for the HBO cameras. But believe me, when it's time,
it should be. I mean, that would actually get more people to watch.
When Hui is in NFL coaching hospice and he's in his final death throes as a head coach of the Browns, I think it'll be obvious that the players, the coaching staff, Dorsey, and all of them, the problem here is by giving a vote of confidence to this megalomaniac, Haslam has enabled him to continue this because I can attitude. And you never, ever want to give that kind of a vote of confidence to a guy who's like that. So those are the two main concerns. But I want to talk about good stuff, too, that I saw in the game yesterday. And, I'll let you guys take it away. Stephen, you go first, and then Brian, your takes on Tyrod Taylor and Baker Mayfield. Will start at the quarterback position.
It's funny because one of my subscribers I sent the video link to, she says she's commenting, but she can't see her comments. She's saying, who do you think will start in week 1? And Mayfield looked really, really good, especially when he would go for the quarterback sneak on the run. Sort of gives you that Johnny Manziel-like presence. He also has got a very good a good passing game in the pocket. And I would not be surprised. I'm telling you this right now. I would not be surprised between weeks 1 to 3 and Mayfield starts. I'm calling it right now. I like this kid's energy.
Brian?
I'm going to go the opposite way and say that, yes, he showed some good things, but he showed some good things against 2s and 3s. Playing with 2s and 3s. So I'm more glad that they do have Tyrod Taylor there to be making the reads and going into up against Pittsburgh, because he went up against the Giants' #1 defense, didn't throw it, no sacks, no turnovers, and actually threw a nice touchdown pass to David Njoku.
Fair enough.
Well, I guess my take will be a little different. Tyrod Taylor is here to be the starting quarterback for this year, and he did certainly nothing in his brief time on the field that would make us feel that he was not the better of the two, because he's experienced, he's poised, he's a percentage guy. He understood who he was throwing to. He looked like he was prepared. He's a guy who does his job, doesn't say a hell of a lot. He goes about his business and does his work. But he's also a free agent at the end of the season, and he has the right to go anywhere he wants to go. And the Cleveland Browns, aren't going to be on the map if they suck and they have a lousy offensive line. If he does decently, He's going to do what any quarterback would do, is to get the hell out of Dodge before he gets hurt in Cleveland. If he doesn't get hurt during the course of this season, he's your starting quarterback, and they don't want to rush Baker Mayfield. With that said, Baker Mayfield came in against 2s and 3s in a plain vanilla situation, just telling it as it is, and made one bad decision on a red screen pass where he ate a sack, and on a third down took him out of field goal range. Other than that, he made a lot of good decisions. He showed me something that I wanted to see. And if you look at his touchdown pass to David Njoku, you will see him distinctly go through his progressions. And he is moving his head and his eyes to different parts of the field. And then he came back to Njoku and placed the ball in a very narrow window for a touchdown. The touchdown pass to Antonio Callaway, if you look at that, I mean, people say, well, the result of the play obviously is the big thing. But I look at the little things. And what I saw when he dropped back is that he had a receiver out in the flat. And he turned like he was going to throw that way, and almost had his arm like in this position. And then it was a look off is all it was. He never was going to throw the ball out in the flat because the play was designed to go on the slant to Callaway, but he just flicked his wrist. And in that instant look off, bam, he hit Callaway in full stride. And that's what led to a 54-yard touchdown. I talk about these things because it's things that Kaiser couldn't do last year. Stare down receivers incessantly. He would not look around and understand where his options were. As a rookie quarterback, Baker Mayfield is far advanced from where Deshaun Kaiser was. And for those people who are saying, well, Deshaun Kaiser went 11 for 18 in his first game, blah, 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 blah. He was throwing to first options only. Clearly, Mayfield was going through progressions. Another thing that he did that Kaiser could not do, even after playing most of the games last year, was the notion of going back to throw and being able to sense pressure coming from the outside, step into the pocket, and keep his eyes downfield. On many occasions, like 100% of the occasions, Deshaun Kaiser would drop back to pass. The second he would peripherally see a guy rushing him, he would immediately go to the outside. And by going to the outside, abandon the pocket, and he was no longer looking downfield. He was running for his life, and it was going to be a quarterback scramble. With Mayfield, on several occasions, he stepped up into the pocket and delivered the ball cleanly. One to C.J. Board, that was a beautiful thing to behold, because the pocket was formed, but it was collapsing at depth, and he stepped into that sweet spot of the pocket where he was protected, and strong arms striding forward hit him where only C.J. Board could catch the ball. The other one is when he was forced outside and made that remarkable sideline throw to Antonio Callaway, who caught the ball with both feet in bounds, put the ball right only where his receiver could get it. His accuracy was very good, which was something Kaiser couldn't do. I don't, for all the talk about Kaiser's arm strength, I'll tell you, Baker Mayfield's arm strength looked fine to me. He looked like he could make the throws to me.
Well, and his final stats are a little bit deceiving, because I saw 4 passes that he intentionally threw the ball out of bounds to avoid to avoid getting sacked, or to avoid just a completely bad play and move on to the next play. So if you took those away, he'd be like 11 for 16, 11 for 15.
Oh, yeah. I know what she's talking about.
And again, and General
Where
Dogs,
Kaiser would just try to jam the ball in, and of course it would be intercepted. It would bounce off of somebody, either the offensive player or the defensive player, and it would get picked off by one of the safeties running around behind.
well, and you would ask, why did Kaiser keep doing that? And the answer, Stephen, you know the answer, don't you?
Well, he was trying to force it. He was trying to force it to play.
Well, all right, and I will give you the equivalent. If you asked him, because he had the big arm, right? That's what everyone was always talking about, the big arm. 11-inch dick.
That and his ego.
That's right. It's like, because I can. I forced it in there because I got an 11-inch dick. I got this big arm, and I can just fire that ball. And he never learned that it doesn't work.
I've never seen him so cocky before after a loss. I mean, he'll look at his stats, and Hugh Jackson's patting him on the back, and you're like 0-10, and he's sitting there bragging about his stats. I'm like, dude, come on, man.
Well, I mean, General Dogs bringing up a couple of good points in the chat room. Kaiser was 9 of 18 for 134 yards last night. There's his 50% completion percentage in vanilla time. Cody Kessler, 14 of 17, but for only 139 yards. And, again, captain checkdown. He does lack arm strength, although I don't have as much distaste for Kessler as I do for Deshaun Kaiser. Josh Allen at 9 for 19 for 116 yards. Josh Allen, by the accounts of people that I read in the Buffalo press, was not all that impressive. What you get with Baker Mayfield is a guy who is doing his homework, who's learning the playbook, and I saw the lights were on. That's what I would say about him. The lights were on. And he appears to have a future. It can all change when the speed of the game and the pressure, whether he becomes the Bula college guy who tries to force everything down the field to become a hero, or whether he keeps his composure. I liked what I saw last night. It certainly makes me feel good that we have him, because we're going to need him after this year. We're going to need him. And based on Tyrod Taylor's performance this year and Tyrod Taylor's attitude, playing for a team that is not going to be a good team, we may be seeing Baker Mayfield toward the end of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
So now we'll go to wide receiver positions, and then we'll include tight ends. Your takes, Brian, on Njoku, Callaway, Higgins. I guess those would be the main three to talk about.
With Callaway, the only my concerns are the off the field. The arrest that he got on the Sunday before the game. We don't know what all is going to transpire from that, and consequently, whether how much he'll be able to play for the Browns, if at all, this season. So, Njoku has been working really, really hard on blocking and on being a more complete tight end. So that's less of a concern. I think with Darren Fells, you're going to see a lot. I didn't see him on the field at all. Did you guys?
Yeah, number 88. He was in blocking situations, but nothing was thrown his way that I saw.
Nah, nothing.
So that would actually be, if they ran a 2 tight end set with Njoku and Fells, you could actually get one of those guys the ball fairly easily. And then, Jarvis Landry is going to be Jarvis Landry. I think he'll end up with at or near 100 catches this year, which I can't think of anybody that's ever done that.
He's a given. I mean, he's a solid professional workman receiver who, goes about his work and is serious about it. So I happy to have him, and again, visions of sugar plums dancing in our little heads, Josh Gordon, Antonio Callaway, and Jarvis Landry, and now the Des Bryant thing, in which Bryant has tweeted that he is going to talk to the Cleveland Browns.
Nice.
And we'll see if anything comes of that. But obviously, the Callaway situation, from what I'm gathering, and I talked to a number of media people who are on this story, that nothing that he did would really, unless he tested positive, all right, which the Browns organization feels that he did not smoke the marijuana. That's what they feel. Now, I don't know whether, it's going to come down to whether he tested positive. But the gun parts that were found in the car are completely legal because he has a legal permit. His driver's license was not expired, as earlier reported. The change of banks from moving from one part of the country to another, it got confused out. But the Strongsville Police Department stated he does have a driver's license that is active, so that is not something, and that's a traffic offense. That's not something the NFL would suspend over. And the issue is being out at 3:00 in the morning and bad judgment on a part of a player who has a history of bad judgment. And what I'll tell you is, I'm not one who's particularly patient, but you drafted this fella. You knew damn well when you took him, and John Dorsey knew this, that you don't get him where we got him in the draft. He doesn't fall to that level. If he wasn't a problem in college, he would have been a low 1, high 2. All right.
And I think Callaway being around the team is part of the reason why Josh Gordon said, "Hey, I need to pull away and go put myself back in rehab for 21 days or whatever, and just get my head right before I come back into this situation." Because I'm sure he was getting hit up for, "Hey man, where can you score some of the best stuff, man?" Yeah, you don't need to fucking be around that shit.
Well, he has a history. When game times get ready to begin, that's when the anxiety hits him, and that's when he has relapses. So, that's the history of Josh Gordon. But again, I'm not going to sit here and dwell on Antonio Callaway, because you selected that individual on the basis of a unique athletic skill set that trumped his character issues. And
which we saw on full display.
Yes. I mean, the way that I look at this is, Sashi Brown hired a bunch of fucking Boy Scouts who couldn't play. They were slower than molasses. And they'd help a grandmother across the street, and they lost every football game they played. I mean, I think there comes a point where, when you have a roster overhaul as large as what the Cleveland Browns have, as bad of a roster as Dorsey inherited, you take chances with your draft picks on guys who have high athletic ability in the position of need. And that's Antonio Callaway. We needed fast wide receiver, but fast wide receivers who can catch the ball, not Ricardo Lewis, who, thank God, is gone for the season. Thank God we'll never see him again. Thank God, they from what I understand, they put him in a cast and he dropped it.
And it was a body cast.
That's exactly right. Coaching staff told him, we told you not to let it get so close to your body. Yeah.
For those that don't know, he had cervical surgery, which that's once you start, you can ask Sterling Sharp about when they start messing around with your neck as a wide receiver.
Not for long.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, again, my feeling is that the biggest position of need for the Cleveland Browns, with the uncertainty of Josh Gordon and the demise and failure of Ricardo Lewis, who was our straight line speed wide receiver, and the lack of. I'm sorry.
And Coleman.
And Coleman, that's right, a guy who didn't have work ethic. I think that the big position of need was to get speed outside. So you took a gamble. If we lose a gamble, at least I know that Dorsey sees the weakness in our roster and drafted to need. What I could never understand is why you would draft somebody just because they were, the best graded guy available on the board when you didn't need that position. We are so deficient in our roster makeup that it gives me a better feeling about our front office and John Dorsey that he drafted people like Austin Corbett, that he drafted people like Antonio Callaway, guys like Avery, that these picks made sense predicated on where we had a lack of speed, a lack of talent, a lack of direction.
And I think Corbett had a decent game.
Yeah, and our defensive backs, another, bringing in all these free agent defensive backs and bringing in all these people that we're looking at for the position, and not just standing pat with a group that just was the cushion city. It makes me feel better about the organization that at least they see the problem. You can't solve the problem if you can't see it. And at least they're seeing what the problem is. So on the overall, I'm, pleased that we had guys flying around the field, and, a lot of these guys are not going to make the team, and that's understood, but they gave it a good effort. They tried hard. They looked like they were working, and, and we brought in people that we need. And we're not going to just let Zane Gonzalez say, here, here's a kicking job. We're going to bring in people to compete, to make sure these people stay honest and work hard on their game. And when we get a hold of a guy like Michael Hendricks, who had a sack of Eli Manning, and he's not even a starter, But what that tells Schobert and tells all of our linebackers is there's a guy who's hungry, who has played winning football in the NFL, championship
and
football.
is coming off of a Super Bowl win.
That's right. I mean, and if you don't pick it up, you're not going to get on the field. I mean, to see that Nassib was just stuck with the second and third unit guys, he may understand finance, but the bottom line is that if you're not capable of being an every down guy, I mean, we put you in on third down, you can rush the quarterback and use your 6'7" length and bat balls down. That's cool. But we have drafted and gotten more interior linemen. And, you're going to be up against people competitively, and you're going to have to work harder to get that job. And the funny thing is, that's what Dorsey's doing with the roster. That's what Haley wants to do with the offense. That's what Williams wants to do with the defense. And the only guy who's not on in step is Wade Jackson, who seems to be okay if they, we'll give him a day off because let him rest. It's the beginning of fucking camp. You see, but the organization, with the exception of Way, which is why I'm certain he's going to be gone very quickly, is he's the one out of step. This organization will get better, and the team will be much more fun to watch with a bunch of guys who realize that they're not going to hit the field just because we got nothing else on the roster. Those days are gone. And Dorsey is going to continue to put more people on the roster. And, if you're Rashard Higgins, and that's the guy that we didn't talk about in this, Rashard Higgins is a guy who I was convinced could catch the ball last year. But there was no protection for a quarterback, and he had a couple of games where he looked good, but Kaiser couldn't see the field.
Where Taylor is developing his rapport with Landry, Higgins has been working with Mayfield, and so they're more on the same page than Higgins and Taylor. And if I can answer Gemini 605's question quickly, how do you guys think Ward will do? I think Denzel Ward's going to be probably a top 10 cornerback this season and should be in the running for Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
Well, and Ward,
because he's going to get all the opportunities, because when you're a rookie,
oh yeah, you got to get thrown at.
Look at Patrick Peterson. His first year, he had more targets at on his side of the ball than anything else for the Cardinals. So he's going to get all kinds of opportunities, and I think he'll do quite well.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree, and I think Njoku is a guy who really showed something last year. Very green, very raw, but boy, he's a big target and an athletic fellow rumbling down the field. He's not a blocking tight end, but boy, he's a matchup nightmare. If you get the right people on the field, he is a nightmare. And Ward, I think, is an aggressive, assertive player. I think he's going to make mistakes, as all rookies do. But I think that he'll learn on the job, and I think he will see a lot of balls thrown his way. That's just kind of the way that works. I think. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask both of you guys, since I know we'll be cutting the show off in the next 10 minutes or so, or whenever it happens. I want to ask both of you, do you think the signing of Des Bryant, do you think that should be something Cleveland should just jump on, at a, low risk reward, sort of speak? And also, is week 1 in Pittsburgh almost a must win? Like, I'm not just saying because it's Pittsburgh division rival, but for the fact that you're trying to change the pace, to change the tune. You got 2 different types of quarterbacks with 2 different skill sets. And also, are you guys concerned about the run blocking entering week 1? And if you can't help the run game, will this affect the outcome of the game for week 1?
All right.
Part 2, I would say yes, Pittsburgh is a must win, mainly because they have to get off the schneid in the regular season and that will wipe the stink of 0-16 off of the team, at least for the short term.
No, it's not a must win, but I want to see what I want to see in week 1. And a game in Pittsburgh, we're not going to win. Let's be honest about this. I mean, we're not there. We're not nowhere near that. But I want to see us give them a bloody nose. In other words, Pittsburgh has always walked off the field saying same old Browns and having no respect. I want to see Steelers carried off the field. I want to see Greg Williams' bounty. I want to see players who want to go out there and make contact and just hammer on somebody. And if we don't have the requisite skill or cohesiveness or glue in the first game of the season, why should we? Effort, hitting. I want them to leave that game black and blue knowing that this is what they're going to have to face for the next many years. That's really the lasting impression I want my team to leave. Rashard Higgins is a guy who is a possession receiver. And, I value, going back to the Brian Brennans, to the Keenan McCardells, there are, the Dave Logans, I'm going way back. Possession receivers may not have the glamour of the guy who runs down the field and catches the bomb.
Let's just hope he wears his pads, unlike Dave Logan.
Yeah.
Dave Logan swore up and down that pads slowed him down, so he never wore them. And the one time I don't remember if it was playing for the Browns or the Raiders, but he got hit in the ribs and it burst his spleen. It ruptured his spleen.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Dave Logan was slow with or without pads, but his hands were gold. And Higgins had a couple of really nice games last year. And I always got the impression that Higgins was raw, inexperienced. He went to a school, what was it, Colorado State? Is that where he went to? where
Yes.
he was, not playing against the ultimate top-notch competition, and he's not somebody who popped. He's a guy with great hands. I remember Jerry Rice when he came into the NFL before, and he was, playing, for Mississippi Valley State, and people said, "What the fuck is Mississippi Valley State?" And at the time, what they said about him is that he caught everything, is that he had these incredible hands. And I remember when Bernie Kosar said, our best receiver, the guy with the best hands, is on the practice squad. That would be Keenan McCardell. Nobody knew who he was. He ended up having a long NFL career.
Yeah.
You need to have that guy who can get you that 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. You can throw to him, that he runs a square pattern, that he pushes off of his break, that he knows how to do what he did in yesterday's game, where he's, the back shoulder, understanding where the ball's going to be delivered and positioning his body to catch it. He did everything that he needed to do. He did it a couple times last year, and I always felt that the lack of a quarterback out there on the field killed Rashard Higgins. And the balls that are being thrown to him, he's catching. And as for Des Bryant, I mean, it depends on the Callaway situation. If the Browns have an inkling that Callaway was smoking the marijuana, and he's already in stage 1 of NFL disruption, then getting Des Bryant would be a necessity, because you don't have a starting receiving core, and you don't know about Josh Gordon either. So, I mean, yeah, I think that if you can get Des Bryant, you get Des Bryant. I'm not saying that he's the same Des Bryant that he used to be, but you're still going to need you're going to still need Rashard Higgins. You're still going to need guys who are dependable. That's why you have Duke Johnson. Got great hands, and he can receive the ball and get you that short yardage out of the backfield, not by running the football, but by catching the football. And it's just essential to have those types of people on your roster. But, I think the Des Bryant thing depends on how much need the Browns are really in right now, and none of us really can surmise that.
Yeah. But with Des Bryant, do you think that enhances you guys' chances to win Week 1?
No. I mean, I think what it does,
it would take him about a month to really work himself in.
But again, you never know what you're getting, and when receivers, are around 31 years of age or whatever, we've seen them go downhill, and there's no doubt that his performance has dropped off in recent seasons. So I have no reason to believe that he is going to suddenly become, born again hard with the Cleveland Browns. But you cannot go into the season without tried and true wide receivers, because all they'll do is they'll double cover Jarvis Landry and he'll never see the ball.
If they do pick him up, there's a very good chance that he can still catch 40, 50, 60 balls for you.
That's right.
Nice.
So
that's right. I mean, and that's really why you would be getting him. And again, it's a 1-year thing. And you're wanting to turn around the bad fortunes of this organization, and you want to win some football games. You got to have some players out there to get that done.
Okay, how many games would you guys have to win in order for you to see it as a successful season?
What is it that you call Kevin Lear's Jumbo Dog?
General Dog.
Jumbo Dog said
General Dog.
I know, I'm purposely fucking it up. Clone Kozar's head on Testaverde's body. With that longevity, nobody will ever break those records.
I like that.
Yeah, that was the only thing I hated about Testaverde, is he kept getting up. and it was funny. Somebody said to me, how did you like Jim Couch on the broadcast? That first time, man, when he had to do that first, on-screen talk, he looked confused. His eyes, and I think he started crying. Could have sworn there were tears.
So, Mr. Moohead, how many games would the Browns have to win for you to consider it a successful season? Like higher or lower than 5?
In order,
I think 5+ would be a successful season.
I'd put 5 as a good season if they're competitive in other games. Yeah, I'd say that's crawl before you walk. A lot of it just has to do. I always say this every year, and if you were learning how to ride a bicycle, Stephen, and you didn't know how, the first time I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, the first time you rode a bicycle, with your old man screaming, pedal, you son of a bitch, and you panicked, you didn't pedal, and you fell over, and then you scraped your leg, and you were crying, and, he called you a pussy, and then you got up and started cursing at him, and then he said, you just wait when you're on the Moohead Radio show. I'm going to start asking questions instead of you. The bottom line.
So anything?
Wait. If you then, the more you rode the bike, the better you became. I mean, this is the way of the world, and it's true in everything. So, my feeling is that we should get better in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, games 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12, 13 through 16. These, we should see improvement, just like you would riding a bicycle. Yeah. And we don't see that. We give up. We're so void of hope that our teams give up. And, we're bad in the beginning, and then it gets worse. Things should get better. And that's the other thing I say every year about the Cleveland Browns is I will judge the season by season's end predicated on whether I feel the players were reached, whether they were giving a better effort, and we were more competitive in the second half of the season than we were the first. That'll be my judgment.
Okay, for Hugh Jackson, last question for Hugh Jackson. How many wins? Let's say, assuming you said if Hugh Jackson can't win in the first 4 weeks, he's done. Now let's say he goes 1-3 or 2-2. Okay, yep. How many wins does he have to finish? Let's say 1-3. Let's say he goes 1-3, so he keeps his job after week 4.
Yep.
At the end of the season, how many wins would he have to accumulate to keep that job for the following year?
I don't think there's a chance in hell he'll be the head coach next year. I think that he's outnumbered. I've seen that. Look, I've been there. I mean, in a business capacity, most fans, and there's nothing wrong with working for people. There's nothing wrong with that. I work for people, and this is how I know what it's like when you're in a position of authority, but limited authority inside of a business. If I was screaming when I was managing radio stations, the format of the radio station is wrong, and the way we're promoting the station is wrong, and the way we're selling the station is wrong on the street for our advertising. And when I would look around and see the managing partners of the radio station disagreeing with me, and I was the odd man out, I knew I wasn't going to be there long because they didn't want to hear me droning on about what was wrong. They were comfortable with the way, they were doing things
in their lane.
Yeah. And which is all well and good. I think that what you're going to see is that we've already seen that Dorsey doesn't agree with Way and the way he's approaching this. And you're going to see more and more as the season progresses that Way is going to be more of a distraction than he is a benefit. And that when thanks, but no thanks at the end of the year, he'll be gone. And he won't, he'll have to wait longer than Pat Shurmur to get a head coaching job, who is still, by the way, a fucking zucchini.
You could tell that's what Dorsey's doing by the acquisition and everything. You could tell he's quietly swifting towards his transitional where he's trying to get you out the door. And then you see the new regime come in, and take over.
That's right. This is a transition year, and there was no reason to go after a new head coach. This gives Dorsey time, and I'm sure Dorsey has already selected his man. Of this, I'm certain because
this was also a move. Retaining Way was also a move for Jimmy Haslam to avoid the whole "well, you're just a racist white Southerner" bullshit.
It's a very well possible. I mean, we still don't know what's going on with this company.
Because the Flying J stuff was all about they were bad mouthing minorities and all this.
Oh yeah, that was part of the story. Yeah.
Is that why Jimmy Haslam doesn't get too involved, because he wants to stay out of that spotlight?
No, I mean, I think that there's a component of that, and I think that but by the time the end of the year hits, and let's say we're 4-12,
that might also be a part of the Dorsey bringing John Dorsey in was, hey Jimmy, you let me run the team, and you foot the bills, and we'll talk and we'll communicate, and I'll show you that I know what the hell I'm doing.
Well, and again,
you have to be hands off.
There's going to be no guessing. Dorsey goes to his presumed choice for head coach next year and says, we've got the pieces in place. We've got, Haley is our offensive coordinator. We've got Greg Williams as our defensive coordinator. So your staff is set, and, and we've got in these pieces offensively and defensively, and we're going to have another draft coming up. And, all of these things were heading in the right direction. And we want a head coach who's on the same page. And he is experienced, and he has contacts, and he'll get it done.
To me, John Fox would be the perfect guy for this, because he's a team manager rather than an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator or whatever. And so, plus he doesn't really berate people or instantly throw them under the bus for random reasons.
Yeah. I like Bill Cowher.
Yeah, well, Bill Cowher's not going to coach. I'm going to end the program now because my voice I've done over an hour and I shouldn't have done this much. But for Amsterdam, Moose should have a segment and call it cow tipping. That can't happen. I'm Jewish. We don't tip. Okay. Guys, thanks a lot for helping me out on the program today. Let's see what happens. We'll be back again Friday, and we'll see how my voice holds up later tonight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And everybody,
back on Monday.
Yep, nice to be back after 2 weeks, and thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you again later. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.